Um, I'm a researcher, a computer scientist, and an anthropologist. I have spent a long time trying to look at the intersection of data and society, and so I now run a research institute, coordinating a lot of different researchers to really make sense of emergent dynamics. But where I want to begin my response to Andrew is actually my own personal story. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, surrounded by the KKK, in a community of geeks, freaks, and outsiders who desperately wanted to get out. I was surrounded by hackers, and we broke into pretty much every major national security infrastructure we could get our hands on for shits and giggles. We thought it was fun. We didn't understand any of the legal ramifications of it. We messed with those systems in the same way that we loved messing with the KKK. It was fun. Fast forward a decade. I'm studying young people, trying to understand what they're doing. Rather than hacking the security ecosystem, they're hacking the attention economy. There's a world in which social media has started to emerge, and they find that they can mess with the system. It is really funny, if you are 15 years old, to look at Oprah Winfrey as she's talking obsessively about how sexual predation is the biggest problem of the internet, to get her to just say stupid stuff. So a whole network of folks decide to mess with her and teach her that the biggest threat to American children is a teddy bear named Pedo Bear, which is the emblem of pedophiles everywhere. And indeed, there are 9,000 penises coming to rape our children, which she says live on national TV, seriously, as the internet giggles. It's funny. This network of young people was just trying to mess with the system they grew up with, the things that they could make sense of. And they started messing and trying out different games. And as they started messing and trying out different games, things started to get serious. These are the networks of Anonymous. These are the networks that bear us something called Gamergate. Gamergate is a very important turn in all of this. Gamergate is a moment in which a conversation that had been emerging around online gaming platforms gets repurposed and re-understood as a, quote, conversation of ethics in journalism and ethics in gaming journalism in particular, at the same time that it becomes an attack vector to strategically go after women who are involved in the gaming ecosystem with some of the most abusive harassment structures you've ever seen. And they innovate and they develop new tactics. But it's also a really important turn in all of this because ambiguity becomes the most important linguistic term. Not being able to tell what's real and what's not being able to make sense of the boundaries of the conversations, purposefully speaking past one another, and strategically coordinating the mechanisms by which that conversation starts to occur. It is also a moment in which long-standing histories of hate-oriented actors start to actively coordinate with teenagers who are in it for shits and giggles. This is the men's rights activism. So now we're in a world of white supremacy. We get a little bit further, and we get into this place where we're saying, oh, we can start to mess with the election. Because wouldn't that be fun? This was a while ago. Because it's great to turn it into a spectacle, but as you turn it into a spectacle and you start to mess with it, you start to build a set of strategies. And indeed, a lot of the networks that I've been tracking, they're not bounded by any one definition, but they're trying out efforts to really mess with the system. One of them is the ability to open the Overton window. The Overton window is that notion of things that are socially acceptable to discuss. And there's nothing more fun than to get mainstream media to ask questions that are socially unacceptable prior to that. Right? And here's where we have a really interesting twist. My researcher I work with, Joan Donovan, she talks a lot about how traditional media landscape understood that they had to engage in an act of strategic silence. There were topics we simply did not talk about as part of the polis. We did not cover Klan rallies. They never went away. The KKK has been active for forever in this country. But we stopped covering them. And that strategic silence was a coordinated effort to not allow amplification, because there's a big difference between the ability to speak and the ability to be amplified. But these networks know how to manipulate the ability to be amplified because they're living in an entirely different ecosystem. So they do. So what's strategic silence look like for Google? And so the networks that I track, the different kinds of people that are coordinating, which includes foreign actors, it includes teenagers, it includes conspiracy theorists, it includes people of all sorts of political stripe in it for extremism, they're willing to share tactic, but they don't share strategy. That's a really weird twist in all of this. And they iterate and train each other. You've never seen the best communications class until you've watched these networks and how they train each other. The ability to create sock puppets. So let me give you a moment of, we're in an attack vector right now that I'm trying to track and understand. Probably if you've watched Fox News or any conservative media, you've heard the false equivalency between the alt-right and the alt-left. The idea that there's this thing called Antifa that we're hearing talk about. The networks that I track have been coordinating for the last couple of months to build a ton of Antifa sock puppets. A sock puppet is a fake account produced to look real, to engage with a variety of different actors. Thousands of Antifa accounts have been created on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, all over the place to make it look like a real presence. Why? Next week, we're going into Berkeley's Free Speech Week, home of where Antifa has originally been a part of. And there will be a ton of media coverage about what is going on there, and they're prepping for a false equivalency that will be narrated up and down the spectrum. Because I can guarantee you the politicos left and right are going to say, oh, you know, both sides were being violent. That's what's going to happen next week. Most of those groups are coming from a network of white supremacists. Those are, correct, very strategically. And this is where we're seeing these accounts, and these accounts are getting created for all sorts of different reasons. This is the economic games we're talking about. These are political actors from foreign environments. We're seeing this strategic gaming of the system, and the irony is that we helped design it. We thought that we would build participatory culture, and we thought we would build the mechanisms by which we would allow people to communicate at scale. All of the social software games, we had fun imagining what that would look like. And this is how we've seen these things get gamed. And I can share a lot more with you about the different kinds of gaming, the different attack vectors we're seeing. But part of why I point this out is that you're seeing this dynamic emerge because we're seeing a whole set of roots that go way back. Destabilized identities. That's actually what allows people to be what's called red-pilled. The idea that you can open up to a new frame or worldview, and that's where we see purposeful radicalization processes that are underway from people who are really struggling to make sense of the world. The funny thing is, for me, none of this surprises me. I've been living and studying these communities for so long. What surprises me is how much it surprises all of you.